unless I'm having to deal with these problems. So government, so do you. Because in the end, I have to come to you to get this money to fix this mess. Sir, go ahead.
It's complicated because there's so many factors. But in my personal budget, if I'm overextended and I have to find a way to back up, then I have to get rid of something I've got a payment on, or I have to cut a program, something I'm doing that costs me money.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's going to be a sacrifice, and somebody might squawk about it, but it has to be done.
Yes.
Is there a different way to do it?
No, and I just want to feel like my district's behind me as I have to face these problems. And that I know that I can go in there and I want to have, and all of us want, David does too. David, go ahead if you have a comment.
Thank you. First of all, Ms. Treasurer, for being here. I have one comment about that, and then a comment on what Senator Allen was just discussing. I'm amazed at the difference between what you show us, which all of us, I think, have felt and have sensed, and it really does help me to see it here. Scares me more. But I'm amazed at the difference between what we see here and what we know, and the message that came out of the governor's State of the State address that started with a sentence something like, addressing the senator and the Senate and the House and the citizens of Arizona. My message today is loud and clear. Arizona is strong. Amazing difference.
Well, the governor's called me Chicken Little on occasion for this stuff, but is it turns out, I mean, I don't get, I deal in finance. We deal with numbers all day long. The key to being successful in my business is knowing your numbers and being honest about them. It's when you ignore the warning signs or you ignore the reality of what's going on that you can lose your shirt. I mean, when you're dealing with billions of dollars a day in investments, being off by 4 or 5 decimal points starts to add up real quick. So, I like to kind of tell you exactly what's going on. The straight numbers, because you both local and state have to make decisions based on this. You need to know what's really going on. And I will agree the fact that this recession isn't that bad. We've been through this before. We went through this in 87. I mean, it wasn't fun back in 87, 88, 89 through that cycle, but this is nothing new to the state of Arizona. It's not any worse than it has been in previous years. It's just we haven't been through it in 20 years, and so people tend to forget. And frankly, what we really need is to make sure that we learn the lessons of this mistake so we don't repeat them all over again. And part of that would be, I think we need to revise our rainy day fund and the way it works. In the private sector, in local governments, you have to have a much larger reserve to get a good credit rating. I mean, our 687 million, I think, was the maximum the rainy day fund got to. We make one payment to schools in April that's larger than that. I mean, it goes out, that entire rainy day fund could go out in one day if it's the right day. And it's just not large enough to actually get us through a normal economic cycle, which is going to take 2 to 3 years. This one may take longer. It won't be that bad, but it'll be a little bit longer than your average because we've got a larger share of the housing problem here.
Doyle?
Can I
I'm
add
sorry,
one other
David.
thing? Thank you. Thanks for addressing that. I didn't agree in January that we were strong when it was said, and I certainly don't agree if it were said again now. I'm glad I live in Arizona, and I know we can fix this problem, but we've got to be smarter about it, and that's what I hear you and everyone else saying. And then just to clarify and make sure that I understood what Senator Allen is saying, I mean, knowing Senator Allen, knowing you the way I do, I know you're not in favor of a sales tax or a property tax.
No.
And a discussion we had this morning over breakfast in preparing for this meeting was that you're hearing people from the ninth floor, if you will, saying that they feel like one or both of those is probably going to have to be shoved down our throats in order to fix this. And I feel like you asked that rhetorically, knowing what your people were going to say. I just wanted to clarify for my own good. You weren't saying you want one or the other. You're saying you knew that your people would support you in opposing both, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I just know that's going to be part of the budget coming from the ninth floor. Okay, Doyle, you'd be next, please.
Yeah, Mr. Martin, I recently sat in the investment overview for Apache County. They had their investment house on investments. have approximately 57 million sitting there, and they gave a future outlook of 5 to 8% at risk, and we'll say 6.5. That would be like what, 3.7 million potentially in a high risk area investments. They mentioned Wells Fargo slipping in their ratings, et cetera, and having money in that. So with those type of numbers and that much invested, Apache County, percentage wise and per capita, is that something common throughout the counties in the state?
I can speak to those local governments. We get about 150 local governments are deposited with our office in our LJIP funds, and actually now local governments are a larger client to us than the state, which is the first time in history. For our investment policy, we don't invest more than 5% in a single issuer company or its subsidiaries. So even if you have one company that's not doing well, it shouldn't have 6, 7, 8% impact on your portfolio because you're not diversified enough. And we'd like to keep it even less than that, with the only exception of U.S. Treasuries. We have about half of our investment in U.S. Treasuries because obviously it's the safest type of investment. But the markets are not doing that well. So we're in with interest rates are down, with the Federal Reserve cutting rates. I mean, our year-to-date performance in our pools was between 4.5 and 3.5 for the fiscal year. Not as good as it was last year, but we're still in the positive. And there are others that were actually losing money. So if you've been invested with our pools, depending on which one you put in, if you were in just the U.S. Treasury pool, you would have made 3.44%. If you were in the short-term money market, a diversified pool, you would have made 4.06%. And if you were in our long-term pool, you would have made 4.49. Or don't quote me on those. I may be off to the second digit there. But so we are doing well. We're doing everything we can to continue to do positively. And I can't speak to Apache County because they're not invested with us, and I haven't looked at their balance sheet. But this is the time you're going to start testing your investment managers, and they really need to be diversified, and they shouldn't be that much in the financials. The financial industry is getting hit hard because of the whole housing mess. You need to be diversified outside of that. Your auto manufacturing is getting hit hard also as a tie-off to this because people can't get loans to buy cars, and when consumer confidence down, they're not buying new cars. So those are areas that are not doing as well. You want to be in other types of industries, but there are, Boeing is still selling airplanes. They're still doing pretty well. McDonald's, great investment right now. It's because they're making a lot of money outside of the United States. So I don't we don't do investment advice, but having a diversified portfolio is the way they should be going. And the only thing, not having looked at that just from what you said, is it shouldn't be that much in one particular area. And we're pulling back. And again, my first philosophy is safety. So we're keeping everything very short and very safe, and we're not chasing additional yield and taking on additional risk right now because it's just not an environment where you should be doing that. You should be retrenching it and protecting the dollars you've got going forward. So don't listen to any of those names I gave you as investment advice. I'm not telling you to invest in those things, and they may not be good going forward, but.
Question there, and Mayor Kelly.
Yep.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Governor, I appreciate your presentation, number one.
Acting governor, I'm not.
Acting governor.
Yes, you
However,
were.
it seems to me, I'm going to comment and then I'd like to respond to Sylvia, your question earlier. I don't see